So before I talk about the work we do now, I do want to take us back to March 2020, which is when ACT was really founded. And I think so much of what we are now derives from our work back then. And as quick context, ACT originated as the Action COVID Task Force. That's what ACT stood for initially, so ACT. And we were really born during the pandemic because we felt like there was a gap in the ecosystem and that there was a need to deliver impact in a different way back then, right? So I think the video will cover this much better than I can. So I'm just going to let all of you watch this.
Last Saturday of March 2020, flurry of emails going around our mailboxes, call it the top 10, 12 VC firms. And then we said, hey, let's catch up on Saturday and see as a group and a community what we can do to better prepare for this impending pandemic.
But what we said is, if there is a platform we can create which allows you to clearly sort of articulate what problems need to be solved.
On a Saturday morning, I distinctly remember there was like some 15 odd VCs and Mikin and I were on the call.
And so we go, what do you need from us? And he's like, money.
In my head, I was thinking 10, 15 crores, but Mikin being Mikin, doesn't think small. Mikin said nothing less than $10 million will even move the needle.
We knew how to raise money. Okay, so we went and raised 100 CR. We knew how to spot good companies that matches the idea. So we said, okay, let's go and experiment.
It was the first time where entire ecosystem was working together as one large startup trying to make social impact happen for the country.
The aha moment for me was literally in 7 to 10 days, this group had basically started providing HFNC solutions to AIIMS, oxygen cylinders to a bunch of these hospitals in small and big towns of India. And that sort of seeded these in-axle kind of oxygen helmet solutions. So this all happened in a literally 12 to 14-day period, which to me showed the power of this network.
Everybody came together on this. So actually it was a highlight was the moment is where the industry came together.
We were very clear that we would actually measure the impact and share that impact back with the government. And the intent of that was to have the government understand what the private sector can do if given an opportunity.
What is galvanizing us is the first phase of entrepreneurial impact that we have seen in this country and what entrepreneurs can do. For the next phase, we believe a lot of these entrepreneurs would pick very different problems and hopefully large societal challenges to tackle.
So that the video is actually slightly dated. Our portfolios are now spans 45 organizations, which I'll share a little bit later as well, and give you a bit of examples of the kinds of organizations that we've supported in the last now almost 3 years. So that was how we started, right, during COVID. And over the first 2 waves, we raised and deployed almost 400 plus crores. We supported many organizations deliver impact throughout India. But post the pandemic, and as the pandemic threat really started receding, we had a question for ourselves as an organization in terms of what is the role we really see ourselves playing right now. And is there still a space for ACT in the existing impact ecosystem? Or, should we have stopped our work after COVID? Did we achieve what we set out to achieve? And I think the overwhelming clarity for us is that there was still very much a space for the kind of work that we were trying to do. And there were 3 things that we saw as quite unique to our approach, which continue to be the core to our work right now. So the 3 insights that really define how ACT works currently as well as during COVID is firstly a belief in tech-first innovations to create impact at scale, right? And when I say tech-first, I know at least when I joined, in my mind, technology was about the digital technology that we interact with on a day-to-day basis, right? Like mobile, internet, etc. But technology for us means so much more. It could be medtech devices. It could be machines that are being built in a different technology to create climate change. So for us, technology means more than just the technology that we see and interact with every day, but it's really around what is the innovation that's happening and how is technology creating solutions that can actually scale impact at a very large level. The second is venture philanthropy, right? And we continue to feel that there is a gap of high risk capital that exists currently for social entrepreneurs. So when I say high risk capital, when we think about the commercial space, we think about venture capital who really supports early stage organizations scale up, right? But the equivalent doesn't really exist in the social impact space. You don't have organizations that are funding very early stage social entrepreneurs who are working on very complex social problems. And usually funding in the impact ecosystem is directed towards established programs, established models that have proven what impact really looks like. So we feel that continues to be a core to how we operate and how we do our work, which is making funds available to social entrepreneurs at an early stage to really prove their model, to really scale their model. And the last is our identity as a collective action platform, right? I think a lot of the impact we were able to achieve during COVID was because we were able to mobilize individuals from so many different parts of the ecosystem. The startup and VC ecosystem to start with, but also social impact leaders, the government, NGOs, grassroots organizations that were actually working on ground to deliver some of the aid. And we continue to feel that collaboration is something that is very siloed in the impact ecosystem, right? Like you see funders collaborating with funders, you see nonprofits collaborating with nonprofits, but cross-sectoral collaboration across all of these different sectors, which is what we strongly believe it's going to take to create meaningful change, is still missing. And hence what we like to call, what we do here is create unlikely partnerships, right? So partnerships that in the usual course of business, you wouldn't really think about working with, people you wouldn't collaborate with in a regular basis. So these are the sort of three principles that underlie all the work that we do across our verticals, across ACT as an organization. And hence over the last 2.5 years, 3 years since COVID, since what we've entered into ACT 2.0, what we call, which is our post-COVID avatar, we've really refined and fine-tuned the way that we support social entrepreneurs, right? And we've done a lot of work in thinking and iteration and reiteration in terms of what do we really want to do to support this space beyond funding as well, right? So the first is obviously capital. And we think that there is a need to support organizations with capital, providing them with risk capital, and not just in terms of the funding we give them, but after that, how do we also help them mobilize funding as well from other organizations, right? So we continue to support social entrepreneurs with funding as well as follow-on funding requests. The second is connections. And here it's around how do we really leverage the community that we've built during COVID. And I'll talk a little bit about the ecosystem we work within, because this is where we feel like we can really amplify the impact, right? We can only do so much with the funding that we can provide. But the moment we talk about being able to connect them to the right mentors, advisors, experts, etc., the organizations we support can achieve so much more. So the second piece that we really want to work on and the way we really support organizations is by connecting them to the right individuals that are going to give them the support that they're looking for. And the third is collaboration, right? Which is beyond our own portfolio and our own organizations which we support. How can we build large-scale collaboratives and large-scale collectives that take the mission that we've really held true, which is in social impact at scale through technology and innovation? How do we bring that to life by working with ecosystem partners and working with others who are interested in similar philosophy as well, right? So we pick up particular problem statements and work with the larger ecosystem on specific collective platforms in this space, right? And we'll bring all of this through life a little bit through actual examples. But this is the broad framework in which we approach our work. We provide capital as a fund maker. We connect organizations to the right individuals and support that they need. But as a collective action platform, we really do try and bring different stakeholders together to solve specific problems. And I think today this is the sort of approach that's helped us deepen our impact even beyond the funding that we've been able to provide, right? So we always talk about our impact across all of these buckets. It's not just the funding that we make, it's also how many connections were we able to enable, how many collective platforms were we able to incubate and foster and really use to amplify the work that we're trying to do. So this I'm sure all of you are aware of, but just repeating it for the group, we operate in 4 impact spaces. And we provide seed and growth capital through grants, as well as then support these organizations through connections and collective action platforms. But the 4 areas that we really work on are Act for Education, Act for Environment, Act for Health, and Act for Women. And if I were to just briefly articulate the large overarching problem that each of these are trying to solve, Act for Education is really trying to bring quality edtech to India 3. So when we think about the bottom 3 quartiles of the population, how can we bring quality technology solutions that help them learn better and that are accessible and affordable to these populations? Act for Environment is really around how do we catalyze action through innovations across different focus areas. So whether it's air quality, whether it's waste management, whether it's energy transition, whether it's water security or land rejuvenation, how do you really support deep technological innovations happening in these particular focus areas? Act for Health is really trying to bridge the access and affordability gap that exists when it comes to access to basic healthcare in our country, right? So when you talk about primary healthcare, there are large swathes of the population who have to incur huge out-of-pocket expenses when it comes to accessing healthcare for themselves. So how do you make healthcare more accessible and affordable to these populations? And how do you tackle specific disease burdens, which are the more non-communicable diseases for that as an overarching bucket, so whether it's cancer, diabetes, tuberculosis, mental health. These are huge problems when it comes to the disease burden of the country and it comes to mortality in the country. But these aren't ones which are currently being focused or funded on by a lot of other stakeholders and interventions, right? So that's really around Act for Health. And Act for Women is really trying to improve India's women's workforce participation through innovations. And how do we really leverage the startup ecosystem to start with to demonstrate that there are ways in which organizations can do better and create better workplaces for women. So that's really the focus of our 4 verticals. And if I wanted to bring this to life through the organizations that we support, right? So we currently support 45 organizations. This is our portfolio as it is today. And I just want to talk about maybe one organization from each of these buckets that brings to life a little bit about our approach, right? So in Act for Education, I'll talk about Rocket Learning. Rocket Learning is a non-profit that's looking to transform early childhood education in the country for underprivileged children. They deliver content through WhatsApp groups to parents and Anganwadi workers. And these parents and Anganwadi workers are working with 3 to 8-year-olds, so preschool students. And then they really encourage them to conduct activities with their children and share back with the group. So really getting parents and Anganwadi workers involved in children's education and doing this in an engaging way that they want to share back, that they are actually motivated to participate in their child's education, etc. Right? So that's Rocket Learning, which is one of our portfolio grantees in Act for Education. In Act for Health, we have Niramay. And what Niramay has done is it's developed a very novel breast cancer screening solution. This is a portable, low-cost device that is radiation-free, touch-free, not painful, that really uses machine learning technology to deliver best-in-class accurate screening results on breast cancer. And then in Act for Environment, one example of an organization that we've supported is AP Chemi. And what AP Chemi does is it takes non-recyclable plastic waste, so the waste that would typically end up in your landfills, and it uses a technology called pyrolysis to convert this into a purified oil. And this purified oil can then go ahead to make things like vehicle fuels, aviation fuel, etc. Right? So these are just one example across the organizations that we support. But as you see, there are many others. And I actually want to let one of our entrepreneurs speak about their own solutions to, again, talk about the kind of work that they're trying to work on with ACT support. So I'll just play a video, which is by Ramakant, who is the co-founder of WISA.
WHO says, for instance, that 1 in 4 people are in distress at any time. I think COVID proved that it's actually one in one. Everybody needs help. Hi, I'm Ramakant. I'm one of the founders of Visa. So Visa is delivering clinically validated, robust solutions through a conversational AI platform anywhere to anyone across the world. So our path into mental health was very personal. Neither me nor my co-founder and spouse, Joe, we are not therapists, we are not mental health professionals. But I've been a caregiver in mental health. Joe, during the earlier part of Visa's journey, she went through depression. So we're very familiar with founder depression. And during that process, we also realized with all the will in the world, with all the resources in the world, how hard it is for us to come forward and take help. Just to pull herself out, Joe taught herself CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy. And we also realized during that time how bad the solutions were out there. We decided that we had to do something about it. And that's how Visa was born. Through the years, we've heavily focused on clinical validation and proving that Visa works. Now we have 15 plus peer-reviewed studies and publications across the world, the largest evidence base in this space. We have published in research publications, very respected publications across the world, partnerships with the best institutions globally. And last year, the FDA gave Visa a breakthrough device designation for our work in chronic pain. We are also the #1 highest rated app being commissioned by the NHS, the National Health Service in the UK. We got this email from a 13-year-old girl 5 months after we launched, and where she wrote in and told us that she had depression, she tried to commit suicide, and this was the only thing which was helping her hold on. And that was the point when I turned from a slight skeptic into a believer and started making me focus and working harder on making something which is really special. The reasons why Visa works is because it is conversational in nature. They can access this anytime, anywhere, even at 3 a.m. and it is non-judgmental. A lot of our users tell us that they don't feel judged. Because it's an AI avatar, it's non-human, it doesn't judge you. Since 2017, Visa has gone from strength to strength. We are now the world's largest conversational AI platforms in mental health. We get a lot of our traffic from organic search and referral behavior. If you look for the word therapy, Visa will come up in the top 3 on the Play stores with users across 95 countries. People from across the world have written in probably more than 200,000 reviews and ratings. Even from a clinical outcome work, we've demonstrated that there's a 31% reduction in depression, work in chronic pain, in outcomes on physical function, pain interference, anxiety, depression. Visa is performing at par or better than therapists. One day I was thinking about and looking for a word which described depression in Hindi, and I don't think I could find one. There are 250 million people who speak Hindi in India today. The moment you start trans-adapting Visa into Hindi, then you have a chance of reaching all those people. Then you have WhatsApp, which is used by billions of people across the world and millions in India every day. If you combine the two, then you are multiplying access and you're expanding access by 10 times, by 20 times. There's no reason why, for instance, then if you do Hindi on WhatsApp, you can't get from 6 million people served to 60 million people served. And that really is the mission. The little penguin is here to stay, and it is changing lives.
So our work with Visa was actually to help them develop and launch their Hindi chatbot. When we had started our support to them, they'd already established themselves in English, but they really were looking to create more impact through a Hindi solution. And that's what our funding was for. And this is really a picture of who we are today, right? So we have our team, which is 14 members strong right now. But a lot of the work we do is because of the support and partnership of anchors who continue to work with us from COVID time. So a lot of these folks are senior folks from the VC ecosystem, startup ecosystem. We have sector experts as well. But also we work in deep collaboration and partnership with the wider ecosystem, right? So on the right, you see the kinds of partners we work with, and these are both other founders, and these are funders. These are also implementation organizations who are really trying to create impact at scale in their own ways. So this is really what we feel sets us apart in terms of the work that we do, just the sheer network and resources that all of these people are able to command and are able to bring to the mission that we've all set for ourselves. This is broadly a bit of the overview of the work that ACT is doing. In case anyone has any questions, would love to take that. Else, I'll then hand over to Lakshay, who can talk a little bit about the fellowship itself. But before that, I'll just pause for questions on ACT.
I have 2 questions, I would say. First is, I'm not purely in tech space, but I still develop garments which are technically or technologically advanced for persons with disability. So that's a very not internet and computer kind of technology, but it's garment manufacturing technology, which we are applying in inclusive garments for persons with disability, patients, senior citizens. So can that technology be also can also be considered for that, is my question. And the other question is, when I saw the first slide and you said young fellows, I'm 47. So, but when I saw Vyasa person, I said, okay, I'm still there somewhere around. So that was age criteria was my second question. Thank you.
So I can take on the second question, and then Alankita, maybe I'll hand over to you on the first one. So we don't have any age limit at all for our fellowship, Brinda, if that's the specific question you had. We asked for people to have at least 2 years of experience, but it's open for anyone much beyond that as well, right? And for us, it's really around the mindset that you're bringing to the fellowship, as long as you're looking to learn about a different space, right? And just given that venture philanthropy is a very new area itself, we feel like irrespective of the amount of experience that people or anyone might have had in different sectors, that there is quite a bit to learn and unlearn often when we come to this space, right? So we don't have an upper age limit. In fact, we've had fellows in the past who've come with significant amount of work experience and from very different sectors, either completely non-impact related or social impact in a very different space. And we felt that they've had an equally valuable journey in this space as well. So that, I hope that answers your question. Alankita, I'm going to hand over to you.
Yeah, I was just putting it in the chat. Hi, Brinda, good to meet you. I think for a lot of our fellows, just to add in to Saujany's point before I answer your first one, the motivation to join the fellowship is really, really clear, right? So the motivation would either be that I want to come into the social impact space. And maybe this is the part of, the mechanics, the whole value chain of social impact. Maybe this is the part that I really want to learn about. The other motivation sometimes is that, irrespective of your experience, and like Saujanya said, we've got people who've spent 15 years in hospitality, for instance, and said, look, I really want to do this. But the reason is that, hey, I want to pivot from that to, let's say, climate, or I really want to pivot from that to learning more about healthcare, right? So it's a field pivot more than anything else. There is a third motivation, which is very specific to founders. And Laksha is actually one of those archetypes, and you'll hear from him very soon. But somebody who's been building their own organization for a while, and you feel like, okay, maybe I just need perspective from the other side of the table, right? So can I come and do this fellowship and really learn the funder's perspective and this impact investor's perspective to then take that perspective back into my social enterprise? So that's another motivation. But age has really nothing to do with it. I think when we say young, I'm in that age bracket, and I think I'm fairly young. Maybe I shouldn't be saying that out loud, but to answer your first question on what you're building. So one thing that I do want to clarify right off the bat is that the fellowship is not an EIR program, right? It's not an entrepreneur in residence, which means that the purpose is not, and the outcome is not going to be to get funding for what you're building, right? Having said that, if you do join the fellowship and you're selected for it, then after that, you'd want to apply for a grant. The advantage that you really get, while it will go through the same due diligence process and all of that, the advantage that you really get is that you understand how we evaluate, you understand our investment thesis a lot better, you understand what we look for. And as an entrepreneur, what are some of the muscles that you really want to be able to build, not just for ACT as a funder, but for other funders that you might want to go to. If you were to just apply for the grant, right, and not apply for the fellowship, it really comes down to whether you align with the investment thesis or not. So I won't go too deep into your specific business because I think there are so many nuances there and that it wouldn't do justice to the conversation. But the best fit check is to, just go through the investment thesis, which is there on our website, and see, does it align? And if it does align, you submit a grant application. It goes through our evaluation protocol. And if you find a fit, we get back to you.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm not looking for grant per se. My intention is I've always spent my life in social sector. Now a business is too scary a thing for me. So how to learn the ropes of business is what I'm looking for in a fellowship.
In which case, it would be a good platform for you. Because one, you're learning from the investors. Of course, you're going to learn, all of us are investors from that team here. But you will also be talking to other founders, right? The founders who
exactly.
fund. They have so much more experience and expertise, like perspective, to be able to do.
All right. In the interest of time, I'll move us along. But if anyone has any questions, do leave them in the chat and we'll respond there as well.
So I think now moving on to the fellowship, I've been a fellow myself in this last cohort, and so I'll just take you through what that fellowship is and what you can expect. Essentially, what the fellowship is about, it's an opportunity for early mid-career professionals or anybody know, as we just said, age is no bar, to really learn what it means to apply venture capital principles for creating social impact. Over time, this is an opportunity to really enable people who are wishing to pivot to social impact as a space, or looking to understand impact investing as an opportunity, or for social entrepreneurs, like how it became an opportunity for me to be able to like really take that journey ahead for yourself. Some basics, it's a 9-month program. It's a full-time opportunity. You will get an opportunity to work very closely with one of our 4 impact spaces: education, public healthcare, climate, gender. And you will be part of a cohort of 6 other fellows. So as part of this cohort, you get also opportunities to collaborate with each other, and as a cohort do a lot of cross collaboration work. I think as a fellow, what will you sort of get an opportunity to work on, right? This is the first question that was, even in my mind when I was applying to the fellowship. Essentially, there are 4 different components. So one is as part of the vertical that you become. So majority of your time will sort of go into doing the work to the vertical that you've been matched into. As part of the vertical, what you really get is, getting to do a lot of projects and processes that will help you get an understanding of what does it really mean to apply venture capital principles to philanthropy. Essentially, what we were talking about right now, what does the grant making process look like? What does it look like to find entrepreneurs, source innovations that ACT can support and potentially work with? Run due diligence processes with those founders and on those innovations. Take them to our investment committee, and really also be able to like work through those organizations in the entire grant making journey to be able to support them with non-grant and other portfolio support processes that we run. So it will just give you an entire idea into doing that, and you get to do some of those grants yourself. I've had an opportunity to do a couple of grants myself and really learn what it means to support entrepreneurs with and de-risk their journey into creating social impact. I think second is we also run collaborative platforms, as Sujana had highlighted. So across all verticals, there are different collaborative platforms that you get to become a part of and eventually lead. Tech Advisors, there's for education. We have Visor as part of Act for Women, Green Startup Pledge, in Environment, Implementers Network for Health. I think we can discuss a bit more about these. You can read about all of these on our website as well. But if I have to share personally, like I got an opportunity to lead the Implementers Network as part of the health vertical. That's a network where I got an opportunity to really learn about what it means to really matchmake and create those unlikely partnerships between nonprofits, private organizations, and the startups that we work with to be able to really take technology to the last mile, right? And figure out, okay, how if tech has to enable better access, better quality of healthcare at the last mile, how do we form partnerships? And how do we create platforms for startups to be able to like accelerate on that journey much faster on that space? So there are a lot of collaborative platforms that you get an opportunity to be a part of. And as a cohort, there are also opportunities beyond the vertical that you sort of get to engage as fellows. So number one is really high exposure learning opportunities from within the ACT team, as well as with the community of investors that we have, industry experts, mentors, anchors that are part of each of the vertical. You get to be part of the investment committees that happen on a monthly basis for all of our verticals. You get to be part of quarterly strategy meetings, high engagement, even with some of our mentors, our experts. So really an opportunity to learn from the entire ecosystem that ACT is a part of. And also a lot of peer-to-peer learning opportunities. As a cohort, you get to do a lot of cross-collaboration work. So from sourcing challenges, like maybe, just doing cross-vertical challenges and sourcing startups for while working with other fellows. We as a cohort did a lot of cross-vertical work streams as well. For instance, we got an opportunity to also work at looking at how do we design an ACT-wide portfolio support piece that across different verticals it can do. We did that as a cohort. We led also our all ACT portfolio wide meetup as well. So we did some designing work for that as well. So a lot of like cross vertical collaborations as well as cohort based opportunity that you'll get to do. I think finally, just also looking at what is it like working at ACT as an organization. Right? We are a small team of 14, 15 folks. We work across three different cities, Delhi, Mumbai, and Bangalore. And I think most importantly, as an organization and the culture that we want to build, right? So ACT really values high ownership, entrepreneurial culture, where everybody acts in extremely entrepreneurial capacities, and drawing really from the space that we work in, and we value that in the team members. We also become ACT is a extremely non-hierarchical culture, so there's extremely distributed leadership where everybody gets to get an opportunity to really lead their paths, including the fellows. So you'll lead your own initiatives, you'll get to really do end-to-end work across and we in individuals across all of our members, there is high growth mindset, collaborative opportunities, a lot of curiosity, which is a demand for this kind of work that we do, right? About learning about other people, learning about startups, working with founders. We place a lot of trust and inclusivity within the team that we work with. And I think finally, again, with the nature of work that we do, it's a lot about long-term thinking. It's about running the marathon. It's about thinking of outcomes as extremely long-term, even with the startups that we work with and internally of what we want to do at ACT. I think there's, you'll find a lot of opportunities to engage in very challenging, complex problem statements, while at the same time, we like to have our fun along the way. I think lastly, I would just say, one of the biggest things that you'll get as a fellow is to really work with those founders, work with those startups. I think that's where the biggest learning curve sort of comes. So that's a great opportunity if you want to learn from other founders and the ecosystem at large.
Thanks, Lakshay. I think just to add a little bit maybe on the values piece, right? Like these are values that we obviously try and embody ourselves within our team, but also the way we work with the ecosystem, the way we work with partners, the way we work with founders that we're supporting. We do see ourselves as supporting them in their journey, right? It is not that we're a funder and we're making a grant to them and hence we have a certain relationship with them. We do see ourselves as really being in service of the larger mission, just as they are working on the certain piece of the puzzle as well, right? And hence, these are the values that we're also looking for from any potential fellows who are interested to apply to the team as well, right? And now I think you've heard enough from us in the team. This is just a very small snapshot of the types of people who've been through the fellowship over the last 2 years. The first row is really the first cohort, and you can see a little bit about what they're doing currently. And then the second row is really the cohort, which has just graduated last month. And hence, this is sort of the backgrounds that they've come from, right? So as you can see, very, very diverse backgrounds. We've had an architect, we've had someone from strategy consulting, we've had Lakshay, who's a social entrepreneur, we've had Divya, who's working in CSR and social impact space. And very similarly, our first cohort also came from very, very diverse backgrounds, right? We've had a political strategist, a researcher, social impact consultant, etc. Right? So I do want to, we do have some of them joining us today, and I'd really love for them to maybe share a little bit about their experience as a fellow and maybe talk about some of the things that they worked on. So I'll pause and hand over to Sunaina to kick us off. Sunaina was a fellow with the Act for Women team from our first cohort. So Sunaina, over to you.
Hi, everyone. Excited to share about my fellowship experience. It's been a little over a year since that experience, that journey ended. But I think Act for Women was honestly for me my first foray into gender as well, right? And it was me really trying to explore what social finance looks like, right? And I came in with a lot of curiosity about, I've seen funding happen in the social impact ecosystem. I don't think it works. Can it be done differently, right? So that was really the big problem statement on my mind when I came to ACT, right? And I think it exposed me to a very different ecosystem than what I was used to as, somebody who comes from a purely social impact background, right? I'd worked with governments, I'd worked with NGOs on ground, I'd worked with a few founders, but more, in a more implementation context, etc. Right? So I think I came with a very narrow view of what the social impact space is and what it could even look like, right? So I think I was a little limited because of how much I knew, how much I was exposed to, right? Coming to ACT, I think you also develop new ambitions for the ecosystem, right? Because I think when you interact with a lot of the VC startup founders, etc. Not just the founders that we support, right? But VCs founders from a more corporate setting who support app, right? You realize that the growth scale and just the level of work that goes into building the unicorns, etc. Right? So I think you also get exposed to a very different ecosystem who think about scale, who think about things very differently, right? So I think for me that was a big value addition, right? I think it made me aspire for like social impact at a very different level almost, right? So I think one, like that's the biggest thing that really stood out for me, right? Exposure to a very different set of stakeholders even within the social impact space. I think second, and if some of you are to join the team, right, you see the founders that Act works in, right? And when you see these people, you meet these people, you know that these are people who could have been doing anything else in the world, right? They could have been at the highest paying job in the world. Um, but they've chosen social entrepreneurship, right? And I think a lot of inspiration you can draw from that, right? Knowing that somebody has set out to like solve the problem of low learning outcomes. Somebody is solving for air quality, and you really honestly start believing that okay, we are in good hands. So you get a sense of positivity of the kind of innovation that's happening and the kind of founders you interact with, right? I think that's something that also stood out for me during my fellowship experience, which is why I was more than happy to continue that. And the third and last thing that I would like to share is just the team. I came in with little knowledge about what sourcing, due diligence, and ICs, etc. look like, right? And I think the entire team is just very patient when it comes to sharing how things are done, sharing their experience, right? Patient in sharing that, and patient in answering questions, and patient in also taking your inputs, right? Inputs from somebody who probably has never done it, but probably has a very different way of doing it, right? So I think the team's approach really stood out to me, right? I never felt like, okay, I don't know this, I can't, like, I've not had like a proper schooling education in this, I cannot do this, and hence I should never even try, right? I always got the feeling that, I don't know this, all the more reason for me to try. So I think that was the third biggest thing that stood out for me during my fellowship experience. And yeah, I mean, Ghulam and Shazid, either of you can also share your experience.
Sure. No, I think very similar thoughts. As I look back to our fellowship time, I think excitement is the word that I can think of. A lot of inspiration that not only came from working with the founders, but also came uh, by engaging with the fellows themselves. Because, like Sojanya mentioned, like Lakshya mentioned, we all come from very different backgrounds. So it was always an opportunity to learn something new. And also, it was not just about learning about our own individual spaces, but also understanding about the larger impact space, what's happening around in the ecosystem. So I think that always constantly motivated us to, pursue further about how can we do better in the ecosystem, how can we engage more and add more value to the organizations that we are working with. And for me personally, I came from the startup space. I used to work with ecosystem partners, worked at a couple of incubation programs, but never really understood the business side of it and the real pain point of what a startup founder goes through. So I think that really interested me into the fellowship program. And when I joined, to Lakshya's point on accountability, ownership, that was immediately given to all the fellows. I was given charge of leading a grant for a company called Bristle, which makes biosilica out of rice husk ash. So to lead that company to an IC investment committee meeting in front of veteran investors like Prashant Prakash, MD of Axel, GV Ravishankar, MD of Sequoia. It's not an easy thing for somebody who's taking a company for an investment. And I was given an advice to lead the company in a way just so that you take the bet that you are putting your money in the company. Uh, so I think that some of these nuances, some of these learnings happened throughout the course of the fellowship, and I'm really glad that the 9 month prepared me in a way that my interest in this sector grew even more, and the motivation to support startups through not just capital but also other ways around, through making the right kind of connects for them, or figuring out the right kind of problem statements that they are going through at their juncture of their journey.
So I think it has been a great journey, and I feel like some of you who will see as part of our new set of fellows this time around, I'm sure it will be a very rewarding experience for you guys as well. But having said that, Gulam, probably you can share a bit more about your experiences as well.
Hi everyone. I think I echoes the words of Shazib and Sunaina as well. So I come from a research background. So I did like couple of years in Tata Hospital, was leading hardcore tech validation in Tata Hospital, and I was on the other side of the innovations. I have been funded by some grant company, and we I think that was the it, right? So but later on, as I grew in my career and reflecting on that, I realized that there is a better way to maybe create scalable impacts. So I think one of the field that I wanted to maybe explore was how does funding work in social space, and that's where I think the journey with the act started for me. There was one or two hypotheses that I wanted to just test out, that whether working in a funding space impact create a scalable impact, and particularly if you combine that with innovations, will that help? So that was my core motivations to be here in act. And when I came to act, a little bit surprised and confused as well, because sector is new, it is evolving. A venture philanthropy is something not heard of any time at all. So for me, I think that has been the journey that I started. But when I came here at ACT, I have been supported by a very, very, supporting team, very, very patient team, to nurture me, to understand what the space looks like, what kind of, innovations are there in the space. So I think very, very supporting team I got. I'm very lucky in that way, I would say. And like couple of things that I think I could share my experience on. I think I had a very steep learning curve in terms of what I did here at ACT. The environment is very agile, and which I love it because I like working on multiple things at the same time. So uh, and we used to get um, proposals from multiple innovations. So that has actually helped me learn really a lot about the sectors. I get to now I know what are some of the innovation that is existing in health space, what is the innovation that is coming out of some of these laboratories in world. So I think that kind of curiosity that I had, that kind of growth mindset I've had, actually the fellowship has actually amplified that. I think second thing that I have seen as well, at what Sunaina said, it has been a very, very inspirational journey for me, talking to founders on day-to-day basis, understanding what they have been doing, the kind of impact they have been creating on the ground. At the same time, understanding, where, why they are doing. So it's a very inspirational journey to be. So when I like interact with founders, it's always, it's always excited to be on that other side, that, somewhere we are also being an instrument of helping them out, creating that impact as well. So that, I think those are the two things. And third thing that I felt this fellowship did to me was an more of an apprentice led kind of training that happened here. So some of these names that Shazib talked about. So I work closely with Sandeep from Nexus Partner. So working with him, alongside him, just listening to some of the company that I evaluated as a part of my fellowship. So his feedbacks were so sharp, so insightful, that just it I mean it actually helped me out to understand how to look at the innovations, how to look at the business model, how to look at its scale and sustainability itself. So I think overall I would say it has been a very, very valuable add-on to my career, and also give me an overview of what the sector looks like, and also give me a sense where actually I wanted to maybe continue further in my journey as well.
But thanks, Shazib, Sunaina, Gulam, for sharing. I will just take one more minute to just talk about what the process looks like, and then really open up for questions. Again, a lot of questions have come on who are we looking for, what are the eligibility criteria. It's on the screen, but again, like you've seen, fellows have come from very, very diverse backgrounds, right? So our eligibility criteria is fairly broad and basic. We're just looking for someone who's in India, who's graduated from a university, has had at least 2 years of experience, and is willing to be based out of one of our 3 locations for the duration of the fellowship. But beyond this, I think what we're really looking for are people who are inspired and are passionate about the mission that we've really set out to do. It's not easy work. It's something that all of us are deeply invested in personally as a team, and hence we'd love to work with fellows who also see that same personal commitment to the work that we do. And hence people who are really able to take risks, take bets, really look at this as their own venture, right? Because when we say we're all co-founders of social change, we really mean it. And hence we do want people who are here to take ownership of that journey, who take ownership of their own fellowship experience, right? So just one thing that I would like to clarify is that by design, the fellowship is not structured in month one, you'll do this, month two, you'll do this, month three, you'll do this. We really do want fellows to come in and take ownership of their journey and what they want to be involved in and what they want to be a part of. Of course, there's structures and processes in place for the cohort as a whole, but really the fellowship is what you define it to be, right? So really looking for people who are willing to be entrepreneurial and who are really passionate about the work that we're doing. And hence, just the last bit is the process now. While applications are open until 13th of August, this is a rolling deadline. So we've already started interviews, and hence we're really looking to close our cohort as soon as possible. So as soon as we find the right set of 6 fellows, we might close the deadline prematurely. So I would encourage all of you to apply soon if you're interested in the process. If you have any questions whatsoever, please do reach out to me. That's my email ID there. I'm happy to answer them myself or connect you to someone in the team who might be better placed to answer if I can. But just in terms of what we're really looking for, please do spend some time on the application. The reason it's designed in that way is for us to really understand your motivation to apply, but also your thought process and how you would really function in the role like this, right? So it gives you a sense of the kind of work that we do. We're really looking to hear from you. And we've already had incidences in the past where we've not heard from candidates, but we've heard from ChatGPT. And that's not something that we're interested in at all, right? Like, we're really looking to see what you guys are bringing to the picture. So be honest, be authentic, really try and show what you're looking for in the fellowship. And that is how we'll be able to understand if this is the right fit for you as well as for us as an organization, right? And lastly, just apply as soon as you can. So with that, I will stop and really open the floor to questions from you all on the fellowship for me, Alankrita, any of the members of the team.
I have 2 questions. I want to know what will be a day for a fellow, I mean, what activities they do in a day or in a week. And second is like, how does this fellowship help for a mid-career professional like me who comes with 10 years experience in consulting, working very close with government, but looking forward to venture into impact investing or venture space?
So I'll answer the first one, Rahul. And I think, like I said, there isn't going to be a very set structure to the fellowship, right? Like, it isn't that on a daily basis, these are the 3 things that you work on. While overall the work that you do will be tagged to some of the buckets that Lakshay spoke about, right? Like, you will be working on grant making processes, you'll be working on supporting our portfolio of entrepreneurs in connecting them to the right resources. You'll be running some of our collaborative efforts and platforms. But every vertical and every fellow themselves defines this journey slightly differently, right? So depending on the priorities of the vertical itself, depending on what your interests and your priorities are when you come into the fellowship, what the exact day-to-day will look is going to be different, right? And this varies for all of us at the team on a week-by-week basis, on a day-by-day basis. Like, I don't have a particular thing that this is what my day looks like as well as a member of the team, right? So I'm sorry, I can't give a direct answer to that, but the idea is that you will work on everything that the team works on, which is all of the buckets that the different fellows spoke about. But the day-to-day will really vary depending on the priorities that the vertical has and that you will be bringing to the fellowship, right? On the other question, which is as a mid-career professional, Alankrita, do you want to share a little bit about that?
Yeah, I think Rahul and I know each other. We've spoken a couple of weeks ago. But I think I know the question you're asking, right? You want to make a mid-career switch. What happens after the fellowship, right? I think that's the big question. So I'm going to answer that with one example. So she's not in the room today, she's traveling, but one of our fellows from this current cohort that just graduated, which Lakshay is a part of, her name was Saili. She actually came from McKinsey. Post McKinsey, she was sort of heading operations at Razorpay. Very clearly mid-career, right? Like 10 years into her career, sort of on an upward trajectory, decided to make the pivot. Why did she decide to make the pivot? Because she really wanted to be in climate change. Like that was the reason coming in, and that was the reason going out. Now, as ACT, are we going to create opportunities for you directly? No, right? However, there are a couple of pathways that you can explore. For instance, one pathway would be if there are open positions within the ACT team, which a Gulam is, or a Shazib is, or a Sunaina is, right? So if there are open positions within the ACT team, you do apply for it and your application does get priority. The other way to look at it is we often have these conversations with our fellows saying, what next? What do you want to do next, right? Where do you want to go? Where do you want to be? Have you, either you were entirely clear on where you wanted to be when you started the fellowship, or you were using this as an exploratory journey to figure out what part of the equation do you really fit in which case have you made up your mind? And if you have, can we make the right connections for you? Can we open a few doors for you? Can we introduce you to the right set of people, depending on what your ambitions and aspirations are? That weight is something that we will always put, right? So fellows sort of walk up to us, and recently happened with another person who's not here on the call, but Ananya, who was a part of the first cohort, she was very clear that she wanted to be an impact investor. And most recently, she's been talking to me and another member of our team, whose name is Akanksha, saying, hey, do I want to get into impact investing? Can you sort of, give me a reference? Can you tell folks how I did, etc.? So we'll always make sure that we're creating the right sort of support systems for you as much as possible. Also opening the right doors at the right time, depending on what you want.
Selected, you perfectly answered.
Any other questions, folks? Otherwise, also happy for you to reach out on email, like I mentioned. All right, then. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining. And yes, please do apply as soon as possible if this sounds like an interesting opportunity. Thanks, everyone.